This really is then the final video on the descriptive writing piece we did on describing a fun fair. In the last video we got as far as the personification about the brainwasher ride spewing out its last meal and waiting its next victims. So the next paragraph we move into, once the harnesses were up, the teens wobbled across the steel tread pads onto the spongy grass. So we have wobbled, which is a descriptive verb there. And it's not just any grass, but it's spongy grass, so we're giving a sense of the texture. We're back to this one. He's a sort of recurring character in our description. So again, we're not telling a story, but we might have these kind of mini threads of stories which run throughout our description. So we might just mention the same character a couple of times just to give it a sense of continuity and to add more details. So we have the one who had dawdled behind before looked pale and ill, but all the others had rosy cheeks and were animated as they told the girl who had waited behind what she missed out on. Now here again was a mistake I'd made through doing this quickly. I'd told the girl who had waited behind, but actually I'd mentioned earlier there were two girls who waited behind. So had I left myself more time to check it at the end, I might have picked up on that and not included that continuity error. Alright, now the next paragraph begins meanwhile, so this shows us it's going to be at the same time at a different place, so that's why we've got a new paragraph. Meanwhile, the dad with the muddy pram had finally caught up with his wife and son, who were standing with hands on their hips by the children's car ride, waiting because the purse with the money was in her handbag in the pram. So again, we've got this recurring character there, and we've got a little bit more dialogue. The little boy's running over. "Come on, Daddy," called the little boy, running towards him and jumping on his leg. "I want to drive a fire engine, it's red." The dad trudged wearily on. So trudged, descriptive verb, and then we add the adverb to add even more detail. They trudged wearily on. The pram wheels now completely seized up, the weight of the body on his legs slowing him down even more. We've got a little bit of a list there of what's making him go so slow and making him so weary. Once he reached her, his wife asked what took him so long. She rooted around for money and handed it to the ride operator. The music started up and the little cars all trundled along their metal road in a wide circle with a single bump of a hill. Every time the boy went past, he waved at his mum, who was filming him on her mobile. Not a lot of descriptive devices going on in this particular paragraph, just a little kind of snapshot of what this family's doing at this particular time. And then we're moving to a new place again, so we have a new paragraph here, but again we're linking this to a previous paragraph so it doesn't come out of nowhere. So the previous paragraph talked about the car ride. The next paragraph begins, "A little beyond the cars was a shooting range," so we can see how these two are linked. There was a shooting range popular with the younger couples who were now arriving, so we've got a sense of time passing as well. They're now arriving. One man had just fired his last shot, but all the targets were still standing. His girlfriend started berating him. "I wanted you to win me a prize," she wailed. So again, wail descriptive. The man replied that it was not his fault, that the gun didn't fire straight, and the targets are all glued down anyway. "It's all a fix," he told her knowingly. And here we're including a little bit of humour because we have this sort of snapshot of this arguing couple, and he's saying the reason he didn't hit any of the targets was because it's all a scam, it's all a fix. It's meant to not be winnable, but he's telling her that knowingly, just as the man next to him achieved a perfect score and selected an oversized fluffy dog with big plastic eyes and an "I love you" heart gripped between its black paws. So here we have this man, he's got his perfect score and he's won this prize, and we've got a little bit of a description of the prize using adjectives. So an oversized fluffy dog, it's got big plastic eyes, and the heart it's holding says "I love you." Again, gripped rather than just held, because that's more descriptive. Always think about your verbs, is there a better, more descriptive one? "There you go, honey," he said, passing it to his partner and strolling away from the stall, cool as John Wayne. "Shall we go get a burger?" So here we've got a simile using "as" and using a well-known figure of a cowboy actor, John Wayne. And that simile is appropriate because firstly he's considered to be a kind of cool character, sort of a cool gunslinger character, and then also because it was a firing range using sort of pellet rifles. Again, that links in with the John Wayne simile because of the gun link there. Okay, we continue to follow this couple, and you notice I think the paragraphs are maybe getting a little shorter here because I was a bit conscious of time, so I maybe rushed it a little bit here. So something to watch out for. Don't try and include too much. Give yourself enough time to finish it. But I follow this couple. The couple had to queue at the burger stand because the young teens were already there. So the two are sort of meeting now. I'm linking it back. And I'm also showing the links between the paragraphs because this paragraph was about the couple. The earlier paragraphs were about the young teens, so now I'm linking the couple and the young teens in the same paragraph, moving it between the two. So the young teens are already there, buying sweets and having a who can fit the most marshmallows into their mouth competition. Predictably, again that adverb will start with a comma. The boy who had been feeling queasy all evening was sick after this, right between the dodgems and the burger stand, and had to go home. So that's sort of the conclusion of that little mini story. This boy who ate his dinner too quickly, rushed to get there. He's been feeling sick all night. He went on a ride which span around, and the marshmallows was the last straw which made him actually be sick. Come back to the burger stand then. Hey, couldn't you have done that somewhere else? Shouted the burger woman, angrily waving her greasy spatula before wiping her nose with the back of her hand and asking for the next order. A lot going on in that sentence. I've used commas to create a bit of a list of what's going on, used a joining word, used a conjunction and to add the next part, and actually we should have a comma there because it's before a connective or before a conjunction. We also have this sense of a quite unappealing image. We've got the burger woman waving her greasy spatula, which already is a bit off-putting, and then she's wiping her nose with the back of her hand and asking for the next order. So it's just a little hint of maybe it's not the cleanest burger establishment, but nevertheless, a few minutes later, the man from the shooting range was holding a meaty burger oozing with ketchup and mustard. Descriptive verb oozing. He's holding that in one hand while awkwardly balancing the giant dog on his hip with the other. So I brought the giant dog back because I thought about this image of maybe having the mustard going onto the dog's fur, and I included that there. Some of the bright yellow mustard dripped out onto the pale coloured fur and ran down in a long streak. He quickly tried to wipe it off before his partner noticed. And again we have that moving from the big picture, or the more general details. He's holding a burger, it's got ketchup and mustard, and then we go into these specific details which really make it come alive, really add more detail to it. So the mustard squirting out onto the fur ties the different elements together. These last two paragraphs are going to wrap it up, and as I said a couple of videos ago, we are looking for a sense of conclusion here, a sort of sense of an ending, and perhaps the best way to do that is to actually have the event you're describing ending. So we have a sense of time moving forwards. The night was getting on now, and even the workers were starting to get tired and thinking about their comfy beds in the luxury trailers that crouched at the edge of the fair like a forest. Use a simile here, the trailers crouching at the edge of the fair. It said it's like a forest. Actually, that's not the best simile. Is it really like a forest? They're not really like trees in any way. I was sort of going for the image of a forest clearing with the trailers around it like the trees around a forest. But it doesn't quite work, and I said they crouched as well. I don't think a forest really crouches, that's more personification. So that was again running out of time. Could have done a better simile there, could have thought about it a bit more, tied it more into the theme, like I did with the John Wayne simile, where it tied into the gun theme and him being cool. It worked on two levels. Moving on though, the children's rides shut down first, then the announcers on the larger ones called for the last riders. One by one the lights went off and the people drifted away across the churned up mud of the field. To have the people leaving, and we see all our characters one last time, all the people we mentioned. So the young teens were all running to make their curfew, so that's a little detail there appropriate to them. The little boy was asleep in his pram, oblivious to his father's struggles as the wheels accumulated more and more mud. So again we're linking back, we've had this from the start, the father pushing the pram through the mud and the wheels getting all clogged up and not working. Final paragraph then, we've just got one more, or two more characters rather, for a young couple to deal with. So the last to leave with a couple with a giant stuffed dog, walking away hand in hand towards the town, their new pet, so sort of a bit humorous there, calling this stuffed animal a pet, held in a headlock in the crook of his arm. Finally, adverbial start there, finally the chains were put across the rides, the doors locked and the shutters pulled down. So quite a straightforward sentence this, just a simple list of three. Chains put across, doors locked, shutters pulled down, just gives a sense of these three things happening. And then we want to try and end with a couple of strong images, something that will linger in the reader's mind. So we're beginning this sentence, apart from the gentle rustle of crushed paper cups and scrunched up wrappers in the wind, the fair was silent. I chose to begin with this apart from because I think it's more interesting than just the something was something. Could have begun the fair was silent, comma, apart from the gentle rustle of crushed paper, but I thought let's make the rustling sound the focus of that sentence because it's a very small sound. Let's really bring that to the foreground, this specific detail. And this idea of rustling crushed paper cups and scrunched up wrappers in the wind actually brings us right back to the start, where we had the leaves crunching and crackling like a fire beneath the feet of the pilgrims. So it almost comes full circle with the idea of a quiet image to begin with, getting louder, and then it gets louder and louder, and then the music fades away, the loud images go, and we just have the gentle rustle of crushed paper cups. The fair is silent now. And then we want one final image, one final impactful sentence to finish this off. So I brought it back to that big ride which was almost at the centre of this description, the brainwasher. Even the brainwasher slept, the moonlight glinting off its steel limbs as if shining from the scales of an enormous slumbering dragon. So even though I was running out of time towards the end, I was conscious to leave myself enough time to not rush for conclusion. You really want to give yourself enough time to give it a proper sense of an ending, really try and finish on that final image which will stick in the reader's minds. So we're doing a few things here. The brainwasher is sleeping, so that's personification. We come to the moonlight glinting, so we've got a descriptive verb. Steel limbs, so limbs is an organic thing like what an animal would have, but this is obviously a machine. And actually you could almost say steel limbs is an oxymoron because steel gives an idea of it being very artificial, metal, not alive, whereas limbs is something which is alive and real and moving and sort of supple and soft. So we had its steel limbs, and then we've got one final simile, as if shining from the scales of an enormous slumbering dragon. So that sort of mythical image to end off, which should hopefully remain in the reader's minds long after they finish reading this. Okay, so I suggest again, have a look through carefully, see if there's anything from this whole piece you could take for your own writing, not in terms of the specific things I've written about, but how I've used similes, how I've structured my paragraphs, particularly how I've made them flow from one to another, and see if you can use that to improve your own descriptions.